Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is week 13. Today, we're going to be focusing on anger management, and I'm going to be kind of going over how we can develop healthy anger management skills. Before I start, I want to say that tomorrow, Tuesday the 13th, we are going to be having a guest speaker, and we are going to go over STDs. I encourage everyone to follow along and listen to that. It can be an uncomfortable conversation, but a very beneficial conversation, and something that we should all know. And then also next Monday, the 19th, we will be going over conflict resolution. So it's kind of anger management, conflict resolution. They kind of go hand in hand. So that's why they are next to each other on the weeks. But to get started, I have Riley here as well. She's going to be adding in her comments. I have some questions for her at the end that we're going to be going over. But to get into it, I want everyone to think one small thing that instantly annoys you. That could be your game's not loading, or your phone's not loading, slow Wi Fi, you're being left on red from a friend or a significant other, someone's touching your stuff. I know that's a common one. Definitely something that could annoy me. Something I put down is when people chew with their mouth open. It is my biggest pet peeve. It drives me nuts. But I'm just saying that because everybody does have things that annoy them. Do you have something that
Yeah,
you can think of?
I think one of the first one I think of is when someone talks over me. If I'm like if I'm just trying to like share something and then they immediately interrupt, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like
Yep,
I'm not talking
yep,
anymore.
yeah. You clearly don't have any interest in what I have to say. Yes, that's something that would annoy me too. But I'm just saying this because everybody gets annoyed and everybody has that feeling of anger sometimes. We're given emotions for a reason and we're
Mhm,
supposed to feel those emotions. But what's different is acting on them.
mhm,
When we act on our emotions versus feeling our emotions, we can have two very different results. And it can be really imprinting some of the results. So that's why it's really important um, to follow along, and it's really important to not act on your emotions because we're going to be talking about how that can affect you, um, and how we can better manage those uncontrollable feelings.
mhm.
So, what anger is, it's a natural emotion. A lot of the time, we feel that emotion when we're hurt or when we feel disrespected by somebody or something. If we feel threatened, maybe, or frustrated, even. Anger is a very common thing that I think not everyone has trouble with, but everyone experiences in their lives because it's just a natural emotion. Um, it often protects something important to us, and that's why we are getting angry because
Mhm,
we're protecting our pride
mhm.
or our boundaries that we set up. It's definitely really frustrating when you clearly state boundaries and someone crosses that. Definitely a common thing to get angry over, or even our values, because that's something that we hold tight to us and hold tight to our heart.
Mhm.
Especially for one, God is something that I value. So if someone were to speak negatively on that, that'd be something that frustrated me
Mhm.
or made me angry. Um, and those things are okay to feel, but when anger becomes a problem or unhealthy is when we can't control the behavior that comes with anger. It can turn into aggression.
Mm, yeah.
It can turn into resentment, bitterness. I know there's definitely times in my life that I've held a grudge on somebody and it was only hurting me
Yeah.
holding that grudge. It's definitely something that, it was understandable why I would hold that grudge, but looking on it the other side, I was putting more energy into holding a grudge and being mad than or creating a solution, bettering myself, focusing on myself and what I'm doing. It's definitely hard to navigate.
I think in our minds, at least for me, I think it is hurting that other person as well.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's actually only hurting me.
Hmm.
And I put so much energy into it, thinking, okay, they're understanding how much they hurt me, or they're understanding what they said.
Exactly.
But they, most of the time, they don't even know. And
Right.
it's just in my head.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, why am I doing this? I think that's the main root, is figuring out why.
Yep.
Why that emotion is there,
Mm-hmm.
and really examining what's happening.
Right. And it's hard for our ego sometimes too, because I definitely have been in a spot where using social media to feel like you are, like you said, hurting the other person because maybe you're angry at them or you are trying to make them understand. So I kept reposting things, or I would post something on social media that was pointing towards that, and I was using all that energy, and all that's doing is creating a bad image on myself, and it's public, so it's going to be around forever, even though I could delete it, but it's the digital footprint, and what you put online it could be on there forever. And I would put all that energy into trying to make them understand that, like I said, I was ruining my reputation, and I was ruining my sleep at night, and my energy levels and my self-esteem eventually. And that's why it's important to learn how to diffuse that anger and solve it instead of piling it up.
Right.
I think that's when we get the most, maybe resentment, is bottling up those emotions and not speaking about it. I know, or even sometimes the situation you're in. I know there's times where I've looked at my parents and I've maybe was a little bitter or had like resentment over the situation I'm in based off their choices, but focusing on that resentment wasn't going to change my current situation.
Absolutely.
It wasn't going to strengthen me any better. It was making me look at the past, but I wasn't moving forward. I was almost just looking at the past and not moving at all. And it was not making me progress in a healthy way whatsoever.
And then it enables us, I mean, at least for me, it enabled me to kind of ignore my responsibility for my current anger. I was kind of just disregarding it or justifying it. Well, because I had the same situation. I would also say, okay, look, I'm in this situation because of your choices. And I was holding that over them.
Right.
And they didn't even realize I was holding it over them because I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I was like, this is your fault. And I was ignoring how I was feeling and ignoring my anger towards them and saying, well, I should feel angry about this.
Yeah.
This is not my fault. But it is my fault that I'm not taking responsibility for my mindset and my sin towards them. Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
This unprocessed anger is sin against that person, or most importantly, against God.
Absolutely. And it's hard to look inward, and because it, like I said earlier, kind of hurts your ego a little bit because you you look towards yourself and you're like, I am in this situation because of somebody else's choices, but my choices are my responsibility at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you take consequence for your actions at the end of the day, no matter what justification you have for it.
Right.
And it's hard to look at that because then it's pointing fingers back at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're looking in the mirror.
Right. And everyone has to do it, but there's people that I've made really bad decisions, and they're well an adult, but they still blame their parents because their parents started them off in that lifestyle. However, their choices now don't reflect on their on their parents, it reflects on them. And that's all I'm trying to say, is your actions, you can justify them, but your consequences don't discriminate against what you've done. Hopefully that makes sense. But getting back into recognizing triggers and warning signs, this is common, especially in youth, young adults, is feeling disrespected or misunderstood, which is a common one. It's kind of like when somebody is interrupting me or interrupting you. It's just like, okay, now it's like you don't want to understand me at all. Or I know parents they're quick to want to try to fix a situation, and
Right.
sometimes we want empathy and not advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes it's quick to get frustrated, like, no, mom, like, I don't want this, and this. I want this, and this. And it can just become really frustrating and misunderstanding. And how you react can create that to be more misunderstanding, if that makes sense. Another thing that can be a common trigger is family conflict, authority issues. I worked with somebody who just completely did not want to, they thought adults were just kind of silly, they thought that what they did is their business, and being told what to do was just like a big no-no for them, and that's something that really angered them. And I worked with her for a long time, and it did resort to family conflict and things like that. So
Like you're saying, it was stemming from
Right.
the family conflict.
Right.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of the time it is a root, a different root that creates that anger. I know when we all have a bad situation that's going on in our lives, and it's easy for us to go to work or go to school and kind of be snappy at people because you're not having a good day. It's easy to do. It really is. But that's where we get into the self-control, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Another thing, social media drama, I talked about a little bit earlier. It's really easy. I think it was especially hard in middle school, and I think it is a lot for middle school because being introduced to social media so young, this was kind of like when COVID was being around, so it was encouraged to stay home and get on a computer, and that's when everyone was indulging in the social media. And so what somebody thought about me on social media, or what somebody thought about a lot of young girls on social media, was a really big deal to them. And that's where a lot of fights, self-esteem issues kind of manifested, was from social media. Another thing which is really common is the stress, exhaustion, hunger. That's hangry. We all get, especially us girls. I don't want to point us out, but when I get hungry, it's somebody better feed me.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but
That's humbling though, because I'll get so mad and be like, y'all, we need to get food right now, or
Right.
I'm gonna do this. And it's like, okay, well, you really gotta think, like, I'm responsible for my actions,
Exactly.
regardless of my level of hunger.
Mhm.
Like, you shouldn't have to, my friends or family shouldn't have to suffer
Yeah.
my wrath because I'm angry.
Exactly.
Like, I need to be in control of that and not letting that affect them.
It's those are your needs and your responsibilities.
That's right.
And especially as young adults and teenagers too, it is still our responsibilities, and you're still navigating through them, which it's okay, mistakes happen, but we do have to really realize that these are our responsibilities, and we can't project our feelings about them onto the people we love, or anyone for that matter. Another thing is something we talked about is feeling ignored or rejected. If someone was talking over me, I would probably just be like, oh, this person doesn't even want to talk to me. There's times where I've went up to people trying to have a conversation, and just like, okay, well, you don't want to have a conversation. Then, it can be frustrating. But I think a lot of the things that I listed are things that once you experience, not enough, but kind of, you just learn to let it go. Putting that into practice and just letting it go and choosing your battles.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. It does have an impact on your day-to-day life and your outlook on things. I remember having the outlook on life when I was like an angry teenager, and I was just like looking for somebody to look at me wrong. It was like, it was
You're looking for a
bad.
fight.
Yeah, I was just like, it was just like manifested anger that I wanted it to fester, and those things really can affect things really big in your life. You can make choices that will imprint on your life for years. There's people I know who didn't have self-control and they got charges because of it, or they had to go to a juvenile facility because of it. Your choices do matter, and your feelings do too. But realistically, people aren't going to look at you being mad and why you were mad. They're going to look at what you did, you know? And that's why it's important, is because those can shape your character almost. And we can put boundaries in place for ourselves so we don't escape those boundaries. And it's something I had to learn, to keep myself in a fence, like you were talking about how God keeps us in a fence. And sometimes we do hit the fence posts, but that fence keeps us in, and it keeps us contained, and it keeps me in my character, is what I like to say.
That's good.
Yeah. The warning signs of anger escalating, I'm going to talk about, because you probably can list them yourself, because everyone, has probably gotten to a point of really high anger. The physical ones can be the clenched jaw, tight chest, rapid heartbeat. I know there's been times where I've been really, really angry, like especially like at a sibling or something. You're just overly angry and you're shaking maybe, or I've never gotten a fight, but all the thoughts cross your mind.
Yes.
Emotionally, the starts of anger escalating can be sarcasm, being snappy like off the bat, just having that sense of irritability. You can kind of sense it on people usually. The mental state is the racing thoughts. Like I said, you have all those thoughts crossing your mind. I could do this, which it's okay. It's okay to think about those things. It's just not okay to do those things.
Exactly. That's it.
That's the point. If thinking about ripping their head off is going to stop you from actually ripping their head off, by all means do it. Another thing is they always/never thinking. I think that just eggs on the anger. This person never does this, or they just always do this and they never do this. And it may be true, and those things may be valid, but you are egging on your anger, which could then egg on some bad behaviors, or can cause just erratic behavior, a behavior that you don't want to probably see yourself in. Because a lot of the times when I've acted on anger, I've just been left with embarrassment.
Absolutely. Or looking back later and realizing, okay, that didn't help anything. I really thought it was going to. Because when you go through those thoughts, and especially on that they always or they never, that was huge for me, like with my siblings.
Yeah.
And because I have 5 siblings, 3 younger brothers, 2 older sisters. So all of us in the same house, and we're all like so strong personalities. So it was really hard, and it was something I really had to focus on to be able to let things go, is to remember that that's not true.
Right.
That they don't always do this, or they don't not ever do this. Like trying to remember who they are as a person, because when you're in the midst of that anger and those thoughts, I completely forget the fact that they're a person. I just realized that I am so angry at them
and what they did to me.
I'm so self-focused.
Yes.
And so it's so hard, but it's vital to remember, okay, they are a person. They are someone that they are my family. I love them. I do love them. And they don't always do this. Just at this moment, I'm choosing to think that they are.
Right.
I'm choosing to think that they are just the worst person in the world when they're not.
Right.
And it's just trying to reframe those thoughts.
Yeah, it's a big one. I think a lot of the time we are focused on like what they did to me and things like that. But a thing that helped me was to think, okay, if I was in their position and I, say my sister took something from my room again, or she used it again. If I was in that situation and I used my sister's thing like I do, and I forgot to put it back, would I want them to come up to me and react in a hostile, aggressive way? Or would I prefer them to have a conversation and find a solution? And I have to just think about what I would want in their shoes, and how this can be a civil conversation to where we're not straining the relationship at all. Because those relationship strains, I mean, there's been times where like me or my sister tried to stop talking to each other and we lived in the same house for like a month. But it wasn't doing anything but exhausting me because I would walk in the house and it was my main focus was to ignore her.
Right.
It's crazy because you want to ignore them, but then it becomes your main focus to ignore them. It's not good on yourself.
That is crazy that you mentioned that, because just, recently there was a situation that with a family member of mine that
Mhm.
I talk to this person about everything, and I always go to this person.
Right.
And that we had a situation that they had done something that had annoyed me, that I had said I did not appreciate,
Mhm.
but it had happened again, and it had happened multiple times before. So I was like, okay, I'm done.
Right.
Like, this is ridiculous. So then I said something very aggressively that I shouldn't have said.
Mhm.
It was the truth, but I should have said it in a loving way.
Right.
And so then when I tried to, be like, hey, like, can we fix the situation? Then that person was like, I think it's best for right now, we just don't talk. And I took that so literal. I was like, all right, we're not going to talk then. That's fine.
Yep.
And so I literally, and again, I wanted to go talk to this person about things, but as soon as I walked in the house, I was like, I'm not talking to them.
Yep.
They said they don't want to talk. I'm not going to talk.
Right.
And you know what? It was so horrible.
It was.
It didn't fix anything.
No.
And I just wanted to talk to this person so bad, but I was choosing not to. And then finally we did have a good civil conversation, and it's all mended,
Mhm.
and there was forgiveness. And then I feel so much better. It's
And
like,
you're breathing
oh,
like
I can talk to them again.
I know. It's just like, well, we could have had a conversation earlier.
I know. 3 days ago would have been nice.
Yep, we've all been there.
Oh my goodness.
It's been tough. Anger can make you do some some crazy things.
Mhm.
But I just want to go over some of the techniques that can help manage anger, which is really it's the same things with anxiety, which is kind of helpful because if we keep these 3 steps in our minds about most things in our life and keep this perspective, a lot of the time we can manage issues, day-to-day issues.
Mhm.
The first one I talked about last week, and that is the 4-4s box breathing. Breathing when you're really angry, it allows your brain to create the space between your feelings and the facts of the situation. That's what we lose most of the time is the facts in the situation. Like you said, it's really easy to get stuck on they never do this or they always do that. But then once we breathe and we kind of think for a little bit, we're like, okay, no, they don't always do that. And, they're human just like I am. We're able to create that space. And it helps us not act on our emotions most of the time. The second technique is grounding. It pulls you out of the emotional spiral. Like I said, it's the 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. A lot of the time when you reenact this or go through the 5 things, you're going to be like, well, I don't even smell 2 things right now. So it makes you get up and smell 2 things. It literally, it makes you ground yourself. And it's basically touching grass. Like it literally is. You can go out and touch grass, which can be really helpful sometimes because we are so separated in that spiral. And sometimes, like I've been in situations where I'm purely acting off of anger, and it made no sense whatsoever.
Mm.
And I was left with embarrassment and kind of like guilt, that self guilt, because no one likes to look at themselves and see what they did wrong. It hurt my ego, or is something you can say. So grounding helps you prevent having to get embarrassed or your ego hurt because you never did it in the first place. And then the third thing is really important. It's just reframing your thinking. Like you said, thinking that they're human and seeing the perspective of God in the situation, going and reaching out to God in situations has reframed a lot for me as well. I know I think I mentioned last week, I had some sort of like resentment, anger towards somebody, and I went in the Bible and it immediately reframed the thought. It helped me focus on myself in a positive way, not in a selfish way, but I was focusing on what that person did to me. And now I can focus on how I can improve in that area as a person with navigating through what they did or whatever the situation may be. So the Bible is definitely a tool you can look into, or God is definitely someone who's always there and will always be willing to have that conversation or that enlightenment, is what you can say. But an example of reframing the thought is, instead of saying, this person disrespected me on purpose, they're doing this on purpose, or I just asked them not to do this and they did it again, you can say, oh, I'm feeling disrespected. What can I do now? Or that person did that. Maybe we can have a conversation about it. And if things aren't resolving, sometimes we do have to put up extra boundaries between people because we can't control everybody else. We can only control ourselves. And so when people aren't improving or they're constantly walking over your boundaries multiple times and you've made the decision where you need to put that boundary with them up as a person to where maybe you guys are still civil and can still talk normally, but you're just maybe not as close as you were. That's something I've had to do with a few people, and it's fine. At school, I have had to go up to somebody, and we're not really close friends anymore because of boundary situation. But we're still able to go up to each other and say, "Hey, do you need a piece of paper, or do you need a pen?" Or if their books fell, I'd still go up and pick them up for them. Um, I think it's really scary for people to do that sometimes because they feel like they have to always think about ignoring them or always avoiding them, which is really stressful. But sometimes you can put those boundaries up when you are disrespected, and you guys can live civilly as people, just separately.
And I think
Um,
what you said earlier is very important of from God's perspective of
Yeah.
remembering that He's created each one of us in His image, and He's created each one of us to be in relationship with Him.
Mhm.
So God wants a relationship with that person that you're angry with just as much as He wants a relationship with you.
Right.
And so just trying to keep that in perspective,
Hmm.
that He is not hating that person. He's not hating you. He's not choosing to be angry about the situation. He loves both of you. And so
Right.
trying to remember that God has given us, each one of us, so much grace
Hmm.
and so much forgiveness that that should be the overflow of our hearts
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it, because looking at it that way, it makes everything flow a lot smoother. I know there's definitely been situations, I've been in situations where I had to reframe into thinking that way, that God loves them just as much as He loves me, and focusing on all the bad things they've done isn't going to help me, and I should want them to do better. I should want, instead of holding resentment or bitterness towards that person, I should want and pray for that person for support and pray for that person to find God's guidance. And that's what I've been doing. And it helps a lot. It takes that anger and focus away of a lot of things.
Yeah.
The next few things I want to talk about is conflict prevention and healthy responses. I'm going to go through conflict resolution next week, but these are just a few things to help with anger. And I've talked about it a little bit before. And this is addressing issues instead of bottling them up. Address them immediately when it's appropriate. This is something I've been practicing, and it's definitely not easy to do because it's intimidating sometimes to have that conversation. But it is really beneficial. There's been times where somebody did something that maybe annoyed me, and I, instead of just being mad at that person or having any type of bitterness towards that person, I said, "Hey, when you do this, it makes me feel this way, and can you please not do that?" And then we're both on good terms, and now that person's not going to do that anymore. And nobody has any negative feelings towards anything, and I didn't fester up in anger for no reason. I resolved it right then and there.
Yeah.
And I use the example, I feel. This is a big thing. A lot of people, when trying to resolve issues like to point, like, you did this and you always do that and you make me feel like this. And that can, if somebody were to do that to me, I would get defensive, like, oh, I'm not that kind of person. Because everyone does make mistakes. And giving people grace is important because you would want somebody to give somebody grace. You would want somebody to give grace to you. So I always give people grace. But it's just flipping the script a little bit. It's, I feel this way when you do this instead of you make me feel this way when you do this. That simple change can make the conversation a lot smoother and a lot more cordial.
And it opens up an opportunity for them to kind of look and see, okay, I didn't realize that when I was doing that, you felt that way.
Right.
Like the person I was talking about, they didn't realize that when they talked over me or things like that, they didn't realize that it was making me feel like I wasn't heard and that my voice didn't matter.
Right.
That was not their intention, but they didn't even realize until I brought it up.
Right.
But obviously I didn't bring it up the right way, but we still got to talk about it.
Right. And everyone does that. Everyone makes mistakes. But like you said, just the way you come at somebody can change the whole thing. But it happens all the time, and it's really easy for it to escalate when you label somebody almost. Because like you said, people don't know what they're doing most of the time that are annoying you. I've had people come up to me and say that what I've done has made them feel a certain way, and that's made me improve as a person. Instead of them labeling me as something, I would just get mad. So definitely that switch is really helpful. And then walking away when emotions are too high. When emotions are too high, we cannot separate the facts and the feelings, and it can escalate to where we act on our feelings. And sometimes that can be dangerous with certain people. You can't control everybody in public. You can't control anybody but yourself. And so when emotions are too high, or you're in a situation where, I've been in a situation where people are almost fighting. So that's when I get up and leave, because it's affecting my safety or my emotions or whatever the case may be. Or when I'm in a situation and our emotions are getting too high, I walk away because I know I'm not going to find a solution. It's just exhausting energy. And then another thing that I see a lot, especially in my family, when someone wants to have a conversation, it's always at the wrong time.
Oh yeah.
Like
happens all the time.
Especially like my dad. It's like he'll choose to have a conversation about something that annoys him right then and there, and no matter where we are, and it's like, okay, can we eat dinner first?
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes we do need to wait until that person's more isolated so we can have a more personal conversation. Not everyone wants to know about your issues or what annoys you at the dinner table
or Walmart.
It just creates tension, more tension than need be. And conflict resolution doesn't need to be an angry thing at all. It can be, but a conversation can get you to a solution, even if it's not one that you necessarily wanted, but it's something that you guys can both agree on, no matter, like I said, if it's something that you wanted. And that's why it's important to resolve it quickly, but also choose the right time and place and environment. And the last thing is know when to seek help or mediation. There's definitely been times, especially with me and my sister, where we got into heated arguments, and my mom's like, okay, like she had to mediate. There's times where people are getting too aggressive, and that needs to be mediated. But just knowing when you need out of a situation, you can get out of a situation. You do not have to entertain anything, and getting up and walking away is a choice that you mostly will always have. And now I want to get into how anger can really tie into our lives biblically. I think anger isn't just about, I think it is about our choices, but a lot of it can tie into how we honor God and how it can help us as people following God's way and Jesus's way. And it can really improve my way of living, especially with anger and how we can bottle up emotions. I think it definitely helps with my perspective. But getting into it is, what does the Bible say about anger? Does it say anger itself is a sin?
Yeah. In the Bible, God describes two types of anger. One being something he calls righteous anger, and then the other one would be like the destructive or prideful kind of anger.
Yeah.
Anger itself is not a sin. Rather, it becomes sinful when it's not dealt with, when it comes from a place of selfishness or bitterness.
Yeah.
Because anger is a God-given emotion and energy that we have to help us solve problems and make decisions. Just like any emotion we've been given by God, it's not evil in itself,
Right.
but it's what we do with it and how we handle it and what choices we make with it. That's when it becomes a sin issue. That's with any emotion.
Right. So kind of like our intention with the emotion.
Exactly. It's our motive. Why am I angry?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Okay. And then how does scripture distinguish between righteous anger and destructive anger?
Yeah. So the righteous anger would be the emotion connected to how we feel like when an injustice has been inflicted against us or someone else.
Okay.
So kind of thinking along the lines of abuse, neglect, abortion, those kind of things, where that's an injustice against someone else.
Okay.
And so those are all things that are okay to be angry about. Ephesians 4:26 tells us, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Which when I was younger, I was like, okay, so I just be angry all day until the night, and then I just confess it all. And then I'm good. No, that's not what it means, actually. It doesn't mean a literal sunset, but it just means don't allow a prolonged amount of time to go by while still sitting on this anger against someone or even anger against God. A lot of people can be angry against God if maybe they've had a parent die or someone they love has died or they're sick or they've lost a baby or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Or they have horrible grades or something. Yes. They're like, God, why are you doing this?
Right.
So it just kind of means, don't let this amount of time go by while you're still angry. And we can be angry at the sin, but not at the sinner. So like with those, a lot of times I feel very strongly about abuse and neglect.
Yeah.
When I hear stories about kids dying because their parents neglected them, they didn't feed them.
Right.
I get so angry, like red hot angry. And I'm like, this person needs to die. Like this person needs to go to prison. This is horrible. But it's okay to be angry at the sin, at the action, but not being so angry at the person.
Yeah.
Like, because again, that person, those parents, God still loves those parents in the midst of those decisions, in the midst of the consequences. So I can still be angry at the action that was done, but I need to be sure that I'm not like hating the person for it, because God doesn't hate that person for it.
Right. And that also takes a lot off your shoulders too.
It does, because I feel like I have to bear the burden of these people's decisions, and I don't. That's not my responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
And then going on is, why is self-control a big theme in the Bible when it comes to emotions?
Well, sin affects all aspects of our lives, which includes our emotions. And because we're all sinners, our emotions that God gave us are flawed. They're not, they don't function as they should. We don't have the control over them as we should.
Right.
And so that being said, we have a responsibility to maintain a level and clear head so we can make those wise decisions that God wants us to. Over and over again in Proverbs in the Bible, they compare uncontrolled emotions and decisions to a fool, or how we would say an idiot.
Yeah.
We all know people who make just horrible decisions all the time.
Right.
And most likely they don't have a good rein on their emotions because they're just doing whatever feels good.
Right.
They don't have any control over them. And we can all do the same thing. But when God saves us from our sins, when we trust God to save us, we have the Holy Spirit, and then we're accountable to Him for those decisions, not just to ourselves anymore, which is why God tells us in Galatians 5:22-23, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Self-control kind of sums it all up.
Yes.
So God gave us those emotions to help us make decisions. So if we want to live those godly lives and we have the Spirit in us, God considers control of our emotions to be a vital component to our growth and our
Right.
relationship with Him.
Mm-hmm. And, developing boundaries is kind of the step with emotional control
Yeah.
and self-control, and instilling those in my lives and keeping myself in my fence. It has really made a difference.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
He gives us those. It's just so cool that He gives us those guidelines to
Right.
protect us from ourselves.
It really
Oh.
is. And then what are practical biblical principles that help prevent conflict before it escalates?
Oh yeah, that's huge. That is
Yeah.
so huge. Because a lot of times I look back and I'm like, oh, I should not have said that. I should not have done that.
Mhm.
So then I'm like, how can I improve the next time and being prepared?
Yeah.
I think it's so important to be prepared for that because conflict is going to come,
Right.
and so you want to have those tools ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the first things is seeking God first. So in I kind of talked about it earlier, in that moment of anger and being like, okay, I'm going to say something, I'm going to do something that's not right. It's important to remember God created all of us. He created the person that I'm angry with right now,
Mhm.
choosing to be angry with, and seeking His will, seeking and remembering that He's been gracious to me. So I
Mhm.
need to be gracious to the people around me.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably one of the first ones. And then humility would be the next, because I think the unrighteous anger, that destructive anger, comes from pride.
Yep.
Comes from thinking we're better than we are,
Yep.
or we deserve to be treated differently.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we do, but we need to remember where we stand and that God is the most important, not
Right.
this anger, and that anger doesn't honor Him. It's not
Mhm.
obedient.
No. It's kind of putting that magnifying glass in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's focusing on the wrong problem,
Right.
and not ignoring that problem either.
No.
Not just putting it off, but remembering what's the bigger picture here.
Right.
Yeah.
Bigger picture.
Yeah.
And then our last question is, how can faith help somebody pause instead of reacting in anger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's important to think about what we're telling other people about Jesus
Mm-hmm.
when we respond the way we do.
Yeah.
So thinking, am I giving an accurate representation to my friends and family of the love and patience of Jesus?
Yeah.
When I explode, when I am simmering this anger inside and being snappy or being sarcastic,
Mm-hmm.
and people see that, what are they seeing? Are they seeing Jesus? Probably not very much.
No.
So it's like, I think it's so important to think of who we're representing.
Yeah.
If we're Christians and we're trusting that Jesus has saved us from our sin, then we have a responsibility to act in a way and live in a way that represents Jesus accurately. And so I try to remember that God has given me an ability to not be a slave to that sin, to that anger. That anger does not control me. I think that's a huge thing, is some people think, well, I'm just an angry person.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're choosing to be angry.
It's a choice.
God has given us an ability to say no to that anger and to choose to be peaceable and seek peace, seek reconciliation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was really helpful, actually. Thank you for sharing. And then I have a closing thought, which anger will come, but wisdom determines what we do next. The goal isn't to never feel angry, but to let anger pass through us without controlling us. Mm-hmm. And then I have something from James 1:19 that says everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. One thing I want everyone to take away from this, if you haven't taken anything else away from it, is anger doesn't define you. Like you said, it's a choice. Mm-hmm. Your response does. And with awareness, practice, which practice makes perfect, not really, but you really do have to practice these skills. And it'll become a lot easier for you. And then with faith as well, anger can also become a signal, not a weapon. So keeping those three things in mind, awareness, practice, and faith, anger can be a signal and not a weapon. So I hope everyone could have taken something out of this today. I think anger management is really important skill to learn to manage. And if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the image of God. Sometimes it's hard for me to do things, for myself or to want to improve for myself. And so it's easier to have someone to do it for, which we always will, because we have God to do it for if we can't find ourselves to do it for. And yes, I hope everyone took something from this today. Tomorrow, we will have a guest speaker talking about STDs and the information about STDs. I think it's important that everyone tunes in, as that's information everyone needs to know. It can be an uncomfortable conversation, but I think being on the computer and being on a podcast, it's a lot less intimidating because it's not face to face. So definitely tune in. And then next Monday, we're going to be going over conflict resolution and how we can instill those management skills into our life. I want to say thank you to Riley for speaking today and answering some questions that I had. And I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much.